Uh, Hello again.
Hello again.
生身不つ
Hello.
ready. Got some members of the animal realm joining us for this, at least part of this Bodhi Day session. Bluebell and Bean.
Best features.
What breed are they?
They're four different breeds actually.
Oh,
They're
okay.
uh, they're Pomeranian, Poodle, um, Pomeranian Poodle, Terrier, Chihuahua. Name it. Basically. No, that is before. Um, I think they were bred for cuteness, frankly, and we got the cutest of the litter, I think. But anyway, they've grown a bit since the last time they appeared in one of on my channel. Anyway, so yeah, we were talking about obviously Bodhi Day and topics related to Bodhi Day and Buddhahood and Buddha fields, Buddha lands, Mahayana. You know how the teachings about kind of the cycle of bodhisattvas and Buddhas in Mahayana Buddhism. So yeah, we could continue from there. Or I was thinking maybe for this session, perhaps we could draw upon each of your knowledge of the specific ways that Jodo Shinshu is celebrated, or specific ways it's celebrated in Japanese Buddhism.
You mean Bodhi?
Um,
Or a Shin Buddhist perspective um, on Bodhi Day. Any of those, any or all of those kinds of topics, I thought for this session maybe we could do.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because I'd be very interested in that just because although unfortunately because I don't know anything about that. Um, I mean how Bodhi did. I feel
yeah,
like, and
me
maybe I'm totally
neither.
off base here. I feel like it gets overshadowed a little by Ho'onko, which we're kind of
Yeah, in
in the
Shinshu,
middle of.
Honko is definitely the biggest, uh, the most important celebration or festival or religion. Here it is.
And there's kind of two, right? Because so, as I understand it, regional temples celebrate in November, and then the Honganji, the Nishi Honganji celebrations will be in January. Is that right? So,
Yeah, the regional temples can celebrate whenever. Usually it's in November, and that's so that members can attend the Honganji Honko at Honson, um, as well as their local Honko. I went to a temple when I was living in Tokyo where it was celebrated in the middle of December. So
right.
it's not, you know,
But the
it's
what I was getting at is that since Bodhi Day is sort of in the middle of that period, it gets a little, maybe it gets a little sidelined.
oh yeah, definitely. It's not as big of a celebration at all, really. I've never I don't know actually like too
Well, can
much
I
about it
can I
myself.
can I sort of give how my sort of take on a Shin Buddhist, my Shin Buddhist perspective, kind of on it.
Sure.
Um,
Please.
would be just I the way I look at it is I look at it from the perspective of you know what I was mentioning in the previous session of first we there's the beginningless Buddha, beginningless past, giving transferring his merit in all ways and also creating provisional paths, and then eventually he become the original Buddha and becoming multiple Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, um and then there's all the individuated beings that become Buddhas through those various paths. But then this is timeless countless kalpas ago, beginningless past. But anyway, so and then you've got eventually the beginning of this, past Buddha, becomes Dharmakara, takes the form of Dharmakara to become, and then makes his vows, practices for 5 kalpas, becomes Amida Buddha, and then eventually takes the form of the beings, or being and the Bodhisattva in the Jakarta tales, in the Jakarta accounts, Jakarta narratives, and then eventually becomes, is born as Siddhartha Gautama, prince of the Shakya clan, and then it goes through that, the experiences and the cycles there of, and the signs and all those things that brought him to the point where he decided to leave the household and eventually, sat under the Bodhi tree and became attained enlightenment, attained highest supreme enlightenment. And then, the whole, in Jodo Shinshu and Shin Buddhism, the whole purpose that all of that played out was so that, and is played out in similar ways in countless worlds, is so that Buddha eventually, in the cycle of their teaching, however many years that is, in our case of our Nirmanakaya Buddha Shakyamuni, it was about 40 years of teaching, and then eventually teaching, the teachings of the Pure Land teachings, the Pure Land Sutras, and all the different teachings about Pure Land, Amitabha, Amida Buddha in the various other sutras as well. But that's the ultimate purpose of the teaching, of the ultimate purpose that Shakyamuni came, and indeed any other Buddha, any other Nirmanakaya Buddha comes to a world, is to give that teaching about Amida Buddha, to give the larger sutra, to give the, or its equivalent in other worlds. Do you see what I mean? To give that essential teaching for, for how all beings, anyway, that's kind of one of the major focuses of Bodhi Day for me, is that ultimate, reason that Shakyamuni came, that Amida came in the form of Shakyamuni to give that teaching.
And what comes to me listening to that, and thank you for that, is that yeah, I guess there is a reference to Bodhi Day in the larger sutra, which is our supreme, right, our supreme scripture, which, because right at the beginning of that, there's this account of the cycle through which
Yes,
every Buddha goes, right? So indirectly, there's a reference to Bodhi Day there. And like as you were saying, that's I suppose then thinking about it now, and thank you for prompting that. The significance of Bodhi Day is it's this, it's this symbol of the Buddha, Amida Buddha, Dharmakaya Buddha's continuing activity, sort of a relentless cyclical effort to bring us to salvation, to come back, go through all those steps again, to that kind of I don't know the right term. Theater seems like too frivolous, but this sort of the same cycle of acts, right? And to re-reveal the primal vow to us.
exactly. Yeah.
And I guess sort of last thing is that if there's kind of thinking about the symbolism of Amitayus, right, as infinite life, and I didn't initially. I've heard that. I'm sure you have too often about infinite life being symbolic of infinite compassion, and I didn't immediately sort of why that was. I mean, light and wisdom, that made total sense to me, but why life and compassion? What I realized is it's his sustaining his own life. I mean, someone pointed this out to me, rather, that he's sustaining his own life out of compassion for us. That sustaining his life infinitely so as to be available to us, right? I mean, it kind of makes me think of, there's it's it's a very
that in,
small example, but like, I think of people who, some people who are in positions where they'd rather die, but they stay alive for the benefit of someone else, right? I mean, I think that's not actually that uncommon. But it's just on the grandest scale. Um, so yeah, the significance of Bodhi Day, I suppose, for Shin Buddhist is the Amitayus aspect of Amida, right? Is yeah, infinite life in that sense. Hope I'm not rambling too much, but yeah, that's
yeah,
that's what sort of triggered in me. And so yeah, thank you.
and yeah, in infinite form. So not just being available in the Sambhogakaya form, but being infinitely available in the Nirmanakaya form in multiple
Mm.
worlds and times and places. There's always a Nirmanakaya form of Amida Buddha.
And yeah, that's a really good point. And one thing I was found fascinating, I forget the Sanskrit and the Japanese terms for this and Chinese terms, but this idea that there's like this distinction into two types of Nirmanakaya. There's Nirmanakaya in the sense of like the that particular Buddha that Shakyamuni
Yes.
in our
Yeah,
time,
I call
but
that the
also Nirmanakaya.
Maha
Yeah,
Nirmanakaya
yeah, yeah, exactly.
to
And
delineate
then
it from the other. Yeah. Anyway.
Nirmanakaya in the sense of like, this or
Yeah.
whatever it may be, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I suppose one kind of significance of Bodhi days, if you're remembering the Nirmanakaya, right? To remember that also in the sense of, Amida's working through everything, a sort of immanence in everything, to bring you to Shinjin and also to support you on your sort of on that boat to Nirvana. Um, yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like there's no escape from Amida's grasp. There's no escape from
So it makes me
Amida's.
think of that. This might one of my favorite. It might be my favorite of the Mio Conan stories. The one with it's like the priest asks the Mio Conan what's it like to be grasped and never forsaken, and he jumps up and like chases him back around the temple. I love that because it's like exactly it captures my own experience. It's like I remember at one point being like, oh, okay, that's what that story means. Um, yeah, I get that now.
Yeah, it's
But yeah,
similar to
it's
the
just,
Monkey King running away, trying to run
yeah,
out of the
yeah,
crowd.
exactly, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of my
And it's
favorite ways to look at it.
I know I love it. It's this relentlessness. Um, yeah. Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you, Scott, because I hadn't really I don't know, I hadn't I think he's given me a greater appreciation for Bodhi Day just now. Because like I say, I think it gets submerged under other things.
Yeah,
Not that those things aren't very important, but Bodhi Day is also important. Um, yeah.
and I just for
Yeah,
me,
I
it's
think
there's
usually,
go ahead, Gabe. Yeah, go ahead.
oh, I
Okay,
was just going
go
to
ahead,
say,
okay, please.
um, the I think the celebration of usually the Jodo-e Ho-yo in Shinshu temples is probably a single day, where there will be a typical Shin service, which consists of chanting Shoshin-e, followed by a Dharma talk, readings, sutras and so on, and probably something related to nirvana in the concept of realization um, as it appears, in so it's not like a huge event like Holko, but it's not, you know, uh, it doesn't go uncelebrated if that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's sort of there's you can celebrate it on different levels. I think for me, it seems like I'd say probably most people, most I'd say celebrations are around Shakyamuni and Shakyamuni's enlightenment and the story of that whole event, um, and the implications of that. More so, I'd say probably majoritatively in the world, I'd say probably more so the provisional teaching kind of implications of that. Obviously, we focus on the other power teachings that Shakyamuni shared about Amida Buddha. But I also look at it on, I sort of celebrate all the Bodhi days of all the Buddhas throughout the 10 directions of every level of multiverse. And do you know what I mean? I sort of look at it that way and celebrate that whole cycle, that's talked about in the larger sutra of the Bodhisattva. I quite like that. I quite like that it's this sacred theater, almost this sacred, what's that word? There's another word for it that sort of played out so that we can get it, over and over and over and over again. So that and it's tailored to each individual being's particular karmic causes, conditions, and place and time. That's what, is sort of amazing to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I suppose we can bring in, this was the topic I kind of said as a potential for the previous session was, looking at the implications of the reason that Shakyamuni appeared in the world as Shakyamuni Buddha, to give the Pure Land teachings is look at Shinjin, talk about Shinjin in that context, that, it makes us equal to a Maitreya in the sense of non-retrogression. Doesn't mean we have all the bodhisattva powers and mind state and abilities, and it just means, somehow we're both bamboo and simultaneously in a state of non-retrogression. We're both, in Shinjin, we're both among the truly settled, the definitely settled, and born in Pure Land. In some sense, we're still bamboo, but in some sense, we're immediately born in the Pure Land in Shinjin. So in some sense, we're there. In some, it's like that. It's like the definition in the glossary of Shinran works about the mind, the bamboo in this, where Shinjin has arisen and settled, and that simultaneously we have the mind of the Buddha, and yet we still have the mind stream that needs to finish out its sort of past and present karma and all the clashes.
Yeah.
Oh no. But do you see what I mean? But there's, in some sense, like we're on that just that edge of enlightenment. We're, in Shinjin, we're on that. Do you see what I mean?
Well, I think it
when at the end of this life, fully enlightened being, in Shinjin.
The vow of attaining enlightenment after one lifetime.
Yeah.
So this is, for persons, this is that one lifetime.
Yeah.
It's just like Maitreya. That's why Shinran says it's the same as Maitreya, because Maitreya's next life will be Buddhahood, right?
Exactly.
And that's why sometimes it's called Maitreya Buddha. I was actually just rewatching the episode where we discussed this. Okay. I thought, wow, what a great talk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we did.
It was really
we had
good.
a couple of sessions around this. It was from the one dream that those bodhisattva related dreams I was having.
You have to remember, Buddha, right, he's formless. It's without form, Dharma, the Dharma body, the true reality. the Buddha takes form through the world of form, right? And that's what the Bodhisattva is Buddha in action, so to speak. You know, so it's like Shinran says, you know, when it's if the Buddha has form, we do not refer to it as the pre, you know, Buddha. And so, just to take all the, you know, because sometimes I think it can get a little complicated with all of the terminology, you know, Sanskrit and the Chinese, you know. But if you just keep it simple in that way, that makes Amida Buddha, you know, his passion, which is, you know, symbolized as light in the sutra, or um, wisdom, or I should say, wisdom is light. Passion is the light, and it's like Johann said, you know, light refers to temporal, and then light shining everywhere refers to a spatial aspect. So essentially, it's saying that Amida is infinite in both terms of space and time. And I think we also read that passage in Ankai at one point there. Donron talks about the present Dharma body being present everywhere, or the Dharma nature. So, saying all of that, I can find the working of Dharma body, of the body of truth, in all everywhere. You know, like I'm sitting here being, you know, and I think that when you are sort of, so to speak, born into that realm, which is the working of Amida and not your own, it doesn't mean, and this is very important, it doesn't mean that this world is the Pure Land somehow.
Yeah.
In
Exactly.
Jodo Shinshu, this world does not equal Pure Land, right?
Yeah.
But rather it means
Exactly.
that we are born into that Pure Land, that Hodo fulfilled land, which is the working of the vow. And Shinran says that our hearts, our minds rather, always and already dwell in that Pure Land. So there's a real, you know, and that's why I think he calls this path a sudden within the sudden, is because it's like a Saichi, the Myokoni Saichi says, you know, I'm there and I'm back. I'm there and I'm back. He lives in this world, but he enjoys being in the Pure Land at the same time, in a sense. And I do like to avoid that term, in a sense. That sounds like we're sort of like, it's not in a sense, it's for real. Let's start using that term instead.
I think in some sense is the word.
For
In some
real,
sense,
right?
yeah, for real, yeah. Like I agree. I suppose I was just trying to say, you know, yeah, for
Well, I
real.
say it
But we're
too,
still
but
very much in this.
it's
You
a
know, we're still.
bad habit
Yeah.
because, for me anyway, because it's sort of like it's trying to turn everything into like, oh, it says this, but not really. It's poetry or something, you know.
Exactly.
And we know, if we know one thing about Japanese spirituality at Shinran's time, is that it wasn't sentimental. It wasn't like, you know, well, it poetically in some way, you know, I am in the Pure Land, you know, kind of stuff. It's, you know, when Shinran says kokoro, meaning heart, mind, the human, you know, our psyche, our, you know, what it is that makes us human, right? um, is always and already living is the literal word he uses, like living in a house, you know, living in the pyramid. I think we can just take that at its face value. I don't think we have to, you know, and that's part of the whole wondrous truth of entering into the stage of non-retrogression in this lifetime. You know, it's like Tonlon says, those who think about those who think about the alien and wish to be born there, as well as those who go there, are both equally settled in the stage of non-retrogression. And therefore the word Pure Land, Tonlon says, is not just merely a place that we go to, after we're dead, but he says that very name, Jodo, Pure Land, performs the Buddha's working. And so when we hear that word, the term Pure Land, it's actually of significance for us. It's not just merely a place that is very far away. It's like you shouldn't think of the Pure Land as being far away, right? Chantal says. Even though, in the sutra it says it's millions and millions of, lands distant in the West, right? But anyway, so I think for me, that, realizing what nirvana is in Mahayana Buddhism is really expands my appreciation of kind of living in the Tao, living in this space that really transforms your relationship with kind of everything, almost, and that's what's so, I think, incredible about Jodo Shinshu.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot. The transformative nature of encountering the light. Encountering Amida's Dharma, Amida Buddha, Amida's mind, Amida whatever. We've
so within this, truth, we can definitely say that Shinjin is not merely some simple and nothing special. It's
something very special indeed.
Something very special.
I think
not so simple as someone might think it is.
Yeah.
Not simplistic, right?
Yeah. I think you can let the teaching be simple without trying to make it simple, if you see what I mean. You can let
so agree with that. Flow. That's a great way of putting it.
You can let the Dharma flow. I said that in another video of mine. You can let the Dharma flow. I haven't posted it yet, but you can let it be simple without making it simple. You can let the Dharma be the Dharma without trying to simplify it, categorize it, squeeze it into some framework that you're comfortable with.
Don't try to bottle the ocean. No?
Yeah,
exactly. You can't put the ocean in a bottle. So stop trying.
Yeah.
So many people try to do that.
I think what I'll start to try to say then is, instead of in some sense, I'll say in some true and real way, we are. Yeah, instead of in some sense. But yeah, we can let it, and that's something I've struggled with. You can see it in our discussions, in all of our discussions. You can see me struggling with that.
Yeah.
With linguistic. Yeah. And then maybe by the next session, I'm like, oh, I'm over the hump. I have struggled with that, and that's, this is one way where I think there's a lot I've learned from various Pure Land paths, various Pure Land teachings, various Pure Land schools, and Shin Buddhist schools, or ones that had some semblance of the appearance of Shin Buddhist schools, let's say, but I've learned from all of them, and in some ways very real teaching, perhaps, well, perhaps very provisional teaching, but it's, true in the provisional sense, but also teaching in the, um, uh, you know, of teaching about Buddhism and understanding of Buddhism. I've gained so much from these other schools I've been in, but I think in some ways I've learned because of the incorrect teachings.
Yeah.
I've learned having, they kind of pointed me in the right direction,
Mm-hmm.
but then I learned from the incorrect. There's almost it was an exact upaya for my
Yeah.
mind to
Well,
pop me
sometimes because
over,
you'll run into something
push me
so
over
like,
the hump. Do you see what I
yeah,
mean? Like to
and
learn
you'll
from
be
the
like,
divergences,
"Man,
like it says in Tanasho, there's that at some point you'll learn from the divergences. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At some, anyway, but yeah.
No,
So
I have to comment on that because that's so exactly my experience. I mean, some of the greatest learning I've had is from those kinds of, yeah, exactly, from divergences or from things that were wrong, because it's kind of like, sort of like light and shadow, right? Like it's the dark spaces illuminate the light spaces, is by seeing like how that's wrong. It allows me to understand what the right teaching is and where those distinctions and contours are. So yeah, that's exactly my own experience.
yeah, I've become very, you know, aware when there's you're trying to put the ocean in the bottle.
yep, and there is a lot to that.
I would say most wherever, yeah,
Say that again.
wherever. I would say mostly that wherever unenlightened people try to make sense of enlightenment.
I mean, it's this, there's that phrase, the Shinjin's simple, and what was it, simple and nothing special. I mean, obviously not nothing special. I really don't like that, but it's trying to get at something which is true, which is this kind of quotidian, like everydayness about it. But that that's what it's getting at. But saying it's nothing special is really it's like you're approaching something right, and then you went like this. And the way I've tried to work this out in my own mind is it's not the same thing as romantic love, obviously there's very big differences there, but there's a certain similarity in that there's this, when you're in love with someone, it's a very special thing, right? And it's a very hard to express thing. But also, I mean, once you get past that sort of initial, the part that you get in the romantic films, I mean, the actual lived long-term reality of it, it's this kind of everydayness about it too. And that sort of adds to, so, there's a simplicity to it, but there's also sort of this more subtle depth to it. And that's kind of that, it also depends on your own experience. But in my experience, that's the kind of comparison allows me to articulate what it's like when I mean Shinjin. So there's like, I just wanted to acknowledge that there's like this element of truth in the something simple, nothing special, but it's not very well articulated. Um,
Yeah,
I know
I
what it's
agree.
getting at, but
I think too, how helpful do you think it is to define Shinjin as simple faith?
Not simple. Not helpful. Not helpful at all. That was very unhelpful to me. Although, in the way we're talking, in the flip side of that because I encountered that it being described like that so
It
frequently,
made you dig deeper
exactly, it made me say there's got to be
or
this.
to it.
It really bothered me. It really, so it was that like you were like Johan was saying, the negative force that it's like the air with the airplane. It brings you, you can
Mhm.
ride that, bring you higher. So it's similar to that kind of thing. I would react so negatively, and I thought it was so very unhelpful that I pushed and pushed to get a better answer,
Yeah.
and often didn't get a better answer until more recent years. You know,
Mhm.
I had to think when you asked that question. I had to think about that for a minute first. But like, before before Shinjin arrived for me, I didn't find that very helpful. Because I think, like, I mean, that can't be right, and that doesn't jive with what I read, right? But like, looking back retrospectively, I also see what's trying to be expressed there. So what I want to say, and it sort of touches with the other expression, is that, and I think I don't know if Kyoken, I don't know if you were there when we had this conversation, but I definitely talked about this with Gankai. You have to kind of remember where your head was at before Shinjin if you're going to be of any help to people who aren't there yet,
yes,
Very
right?
exactly,
true. I agree.
And like,
exactly.
okay, now from where I'm at now, okay, yeah, I understand what you mean, right? Like, I see the truth in what's being expressed there,
Right.
but I don't think that's helpful to someone who's not there yet. And
Yes,
what's, what I mean, there's
exactly.
sort of two.
Yep.
You have to keep that and
Yep.
Exactly.
I've
And I
said
think,
exactly that. I've thought
yeah.
exactly that. That people, the people who are talking about Shinja often don't have the ability to kind of talk to people who don't.
Mhm.
They're talking to people
Yeah,
as if
it's a
they're
real
already
problem.
the and when I said I have Shinjin, I mean
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Shinjin hasn't settled, hasn't arisen and settled,
Hmm.
and they're talking to people as though it has arisen and settled, and you know,
Hmm.
but they think they're talking to the person that
So, yeah,
isn't
like for
yet
example,
settled,
dismissing
faith,
people's
or isn't
doubts,
yet
like,
settled,
oh, well, just believe or something like that. You
or make a
just
decision.
just don't doubt.
Make a decision. Just make a decision.
It doesn't
Just
work like that, right?
answer the three questions. I mean, do you entrust him? Do you entrust to Amida? Do
Yeah.
you do you aspire to go to his land? Do you say his name? I mean,
There you go.
it's a done
Yeah.
deal,
So
isn't it?
the problem with the word faith, is that it means something different to every single person.
Yeah.
And so there's no way all of these different, because there's Jiviki faith, right? There's self-power. There's, all kinds of different ideas and concepts of what faith is. I don't, by the way, have a problem with faith. And I think as a translation of Shin, it's perfectly fine. Um, but Shinjin, has a much more deeper and completely different meaning than just simply, faith in a Western Christian context, which is the background of most people, right? Coming to Buddhism from our. But I also think, I kind of agree with what Paul Tillich said about faith, that it needs to be sort of rehabilitated, and to what degree it has been. We may come to a point where we can talk about, I think I actually feel that for Shin Buddhists, like, we're sort of at a point where we can talk about pain again. It's already rehabilitated
Yes.
for us.
It's almost
But that's not true for
as long
everybody,
as it
right?
encompasses all those meanings, and
Yeah,
you don't, if you go to the literal level, then you're going to somebody else's translation. If you're speaking English and do you see what I mean? You have to see the
right.
meaning. You always have to see the meaning and as much of the broader meaning as
Hmm.
possible. I always recommend Reverend Dr. Matsumoto's for
Yeah,
lectures on
excellent.
Shinjin, and the psychology of Shinjin lectures as well, that they
Yeah,
did at
good stuff.
BCE.
In that spirit, I don't know if what I'm about to say is
We've
terribly
got like
helpful.
30 seconds or 20 seconds. Yeah,
I'm very
go for
quick.
it. Go for
I
it.
don't know if it'll be helpful to people in the spirit of what we just been saying, but I like the word faith, but it's faith with an uppercase F for me.